Godwyn the Golden, or the Death Prince, who takes on the form of this oceany squid guy, who, to be honest, I have wondered if you cooked him, would he taste like calamari? That very same guy has posed a lot of questions to the community on what his role is inside the DLC and the base game, and a lot of people have been disappointed that he didn't get as much information inside the DLC. But I want to propose another proposition. I actually believe all the answers we need are already there. It's just that the answers to our questions have been missed or overlooked. And in today's video we're going to be delving into all of that. A really small percentage of the people that watch these videos are actually subscribed. I know people misunderstand this, but I'm not asking to subscribe right now. I genuinely mean only and only if you do enjoy the video at the very end, please do consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Without any further ado, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and mouth-watering prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into Godwyn the Golden, aka Squid Boy. I'm not going to faff around, I'm just going to tell you what I think. I truly believe that Godwyn the Golden is still alive, and there's quite a few reasons for this. If you go into the catacombs where the Death Knights are, you'll actually find Godwyn's faces. There's 3 Death Knights in total, and 2 faces that I'm aware of inside the Lands of Shadow. I find it really interesting that Godwyn's faces have washed up on the Lands of Shadow. Then again, some item descriptions do state that all manner of death washes up in the Lands of Shadow. Now you could go down the route that, oh, Godwyn was buried by the foot of the Erd tree, so it's sort of gone through that veil and it's ended up in the Lands of Shadow and whatnot. But I think the more likely answer is Godwyn is choosing to send his death route further into the Lands of Shadow. Because make no mistake, sending his death route into the Lands of Shadow is going to be very hard. It's veiled for a reason, and I don't think he'd be able to just do it like he does with the Lands Between. His reason for this, I believe, is the cadaver surrogate. Item descriptions describe this surrogate as his surrogate. A surrogate for the age of the Duskborn. The interesting word in here is cadaver. If you don't know, cadaver basically means corpse. So what he's looking for is a corpse surrogate. And considering everything we know, I think it's quite obvious he's looking for a person who lives in death to be his surrogate. And when you really consider that, everything seems to make a lot more sense. Every dynasty needs an heir to continue on its legacy, and Godwyn's Duskborn is no exception. The question now arises, who is this surrogate and what was their role, and why didn't they just use fear? I first want to talk about who I think the surrogate is, and it might surprise you, but there's actually a lot of evidence that suggests that Matia, the Mother of Fingers, is in fact the surrogate for Godwyn. Located in the catacombs where Godwyn's faces lie, you'll find these sorcerers who use sorcery of Matia, the Mother of Fingers. I do not believe their placement here was unintentional. To add further on to this, if you actually look at the spell's icon, you'll notice Godwyn's logo. This is really interesting because it's Matia's follower's spell. This to me indicates an alliance, or at least a combination of their forces, and in my opinion further proof that Matia is the surrogate. And I think the reason why they're there is because Godwyn's Death Knights are there. It is said in item descriptions that these Death Knights, who were the personal guard of Godwyn before he transformed, were in fact the protector of Godwyn's cadaver surrogate. Matia is, in my opinion, along with that, the only candidate to be Godwyn's cadaver surrogate. On top of all of this, if you look at Matia, she looks like a culmination of fingers and corpses. She looks like this monstrosity. So the title of cadaver surrogate makes a lot of sense to me. She looks like a corpse, so the name is really fitting to have been bestowed upon her. A question I hear you asking now is, Gecko, why are you saying that Matia is cooking fear? And I think the answer actually answers a lot of questions what we never even asked about. After coming back from the dead by the power of grace, have you ever wondered what it does to your ability to have children? And I think this might be the answer. A surrogate in childbirth is used when a female can't produce a child by herself, so she needs someone else to help carry the baby for her. This can be for a multitude of reasons. The fact that Godwyn needs a surrogate is evidence to me that fear is barren, possibly suggesting that those who have been brought back from the dead can't have children. And yet a problem with this comes up. Inside of Fear's questline, she talks about Godwyn lying with her, and that in her belly she'll feel the child, the rune. I actually think this makes a lot of sense as well, for if someone is barren they can't get pregnant, or at least that's my understanding of it. And yet she talks about being with child. I think it's a bit different with her. I definitely don't think she can produce a healthy living heir, but I do think perhaps she can birth stillborns. In From Software's games, stillborns are a common theme. I truly believe that the great rune we use at the end of Fia's questline is her stillborn child. She births it just like any other woman, and this is the result. This also brings up a lot of questions about the other great runes we can get inside of Elden Ring. Are they children of the specific people as well? It's hard to really know, but if Fia's is anything to go by, perhaps they are. Going back onto Fia, she talks really softly about Godwyn. She talks as if she knows him, as if she's had living, breathing conversations with him that weren't deluded talks, without any sort of meaning to them, and ones that weren't even replicated by Godwyn. At the end of her quest line, she says, "Godwyn, is that you, dear?" When she gives you the mending rune of the Dusk Prince, and slightly before that, she talks about being with child from Godwyn. This seems to me like it was a consenting act, further reinforcing the idea that Godwyn is alive and is conscious. A question you're probably going to be now thinking about is, what about Castle Sol? Weren't they there trying to revive Godwyn, their soulless comrade? And I actually think that those at Castle Sol were manipulated. From everything we see there, there's memorabilia and traditions and banners of the Death Prince, of death. And yet, considering what we've just talked about, it doesn't make much sense. I actually believe that it wasn't the Death Prince, it wasn't Godwyn they were trying to revive there. Considering the DLC, I actually think it was Radahn. And Miquella manipulated, as he always does, the followers of the Death Prince, who knew no better. They worked and worked to revive Godwyn, only it was Radahn. I think this is a fitting conclusion to Castle Sol's story, and it is really tragic. At the top of Castle Sol, a spirit says, "We're sorry, my lord. I'll never see your Halig tree because we sort of screwed up when we failed to revive your soulless comrade." And yet, if it is true what I've said about Godwyn, then he is conscious and he is alive. So who's he talking about? Well, he must be talking about Radahn, but because they've been manipulated, oh fuck off playing, because they've been manipulated, they don't know any different, so they simply believe they're trying to revive Godwyn, and when he doesn't rise up out of the ground like they expected him to, they've took it as a failure, and Miquella's let them stew and die in their misery and disappointment. You might have noticed I didn't say it actually succeeded, and I don't fully believe it did. I believe this is just another one of Miquella's half-hearted, half-baked projects. I believe he probably gave up on it, instead favouring the little scroll we find inside of the Black Keep, inside the Lands of Shadow, where it talks about how you can use another demigod's body and transfer the one you want into the other's body, like Miquella does with Mohg, bringing Radahn back. I believe that's what he focused on, completely forgetting about the buggers he just left in Castle Sol. Earlier in the video we talked about Mattea and how she's the cadaver surrogate, and I 100% agree with that, but there's a lot more to it, and it actually makes a lot more sense considering Mattea's character that she'd want to be the surrogate instead of this proud queen consort. Mattea has pulled the strings all throughout Elden Ring's story. She plays the greater will inside of Elden Ring, as we learn in Shadow of the Erdtree. So why should this be any different? Well, the answer is, Buckaroo, I don't think it is any different. Mattea has always hid to the shadows, and I think she wants to be at play with this new story. I believe she wants to bring in the age of the Duskborn. The mending rune, which is possibly Fia's stillborn child, talks about a new age of the Duskborn where death is reintroduced to the land. Considering everything we know about Mattea's past, and the fact she most likely played a role in removing the rune of death originally, the fact she wants to reinstate it sort of shows her indecisiveness, and I truly believe that Mattea is trying to do something malicious. Anything that Mattea touches turns to ash, and I don't think this is going to be any different. And it kind of brings up some questions about the age of the Duskborn that people really hadn't considered. A lot of people loved Fia's character. I thought she was a great character too. But considering this, can she be trusted? And is the age of the Duskborn as good as everyone seems to think it is? Do the Death Hunters like D know something that we don't? Is there a reason why he hates them so vehemently, other than the fact they go against the Golden Order? The truth of that, we probably won't ever know, but it's definitely an interesting thought and an interesting idea as to the true origins and true nature of the Age of the Duskborn. I just want to quickly clear some things up. First of all, the death faces are not the cadaver surrogates. There are multiple faces, and yet in item descriptions it only states there is one surrogate. Number 2, why are the Death Knights down in the catacombs? Now this is a bit trickier, but I think I also know the answer to this. Inside of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, the way we enter the DLC is by touching Miquella's corpse hand. Considering Godwyn's face is inside the Lands of Shadow, it kind of gives us a possibility that it was there before Miquella entered the Lands of Shadow. Meaning that the Death Knight could not have entered via Miquella's cocoon. So how did they enter? I think the faces are the key. They guard these faces with their life. And I think the reason why they guard them so protectively has to do with their power they hold. We're never told what their powers are or what their significance are, except from sprouting Deathroot. Maybe when you touch them, just like Miquella's cocoon, you get transported to the Lands of Shadow. That is the only answer I can think of how they got there and why they guard them so protectively. Perhaps the body of a demigod or a god is the key to the Lands of Shadow, for I am sure Miquella's cocoon is not the only way to enter the veiled lands of the Lands of Shadow. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel and it lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. If you didn't like the video, then please feel free to leave a dislike. I'm not going to waffle any longer, as that's what I seem to do whenever I end up finishing the video. So, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.